All right, this is Adam Gorney back with the Respect My Decision podcast this week, joined by a very special guest, TC Lewis, JuJu Lewis's dad, the number one player in the country. And the most important question, how is it to be back home? I mean, June was like on the road every weekend. I think you did Elite 11, Rivals 5-star, 3 visits. I think we were talking once, you said you were home for 24 hours before getting back on there. What's it like to just be home and be settled again?
It feels really good to be back home. We took advantage of the dead week last week in Georgia and took some time, went on a little vacation, and that was really good. I think Ju is recharged and ready to go. He's super excited for the season and just looking forward to getting going with his team.
Everybody who follows recruiting follows it like daily. It's like a big soap opera. But for you being in it, like how much do you want JuJu to just kind of not be in it every single second? And especially you to kind of reset too.
Absolutely. There were a lot of sleepless nights, for me over the last month or so, just kind of looking at things. But for Ju, it's important to reset. I try and get him to stay off social media as much as possible. It's funny, like when he was little, I tell him, hey, don't read the comments, don't look at this, don't look at that, just stay out of all of it. But these kids are so aware. I think the recruiting thing, he's kind of mastered his own marketing on it a little bit. He's kind of figured out, like how to incite a riot every now and then and get things going. So he's enjoying it and he's looking forward to wrapping it up at the same time.
Let's kind of review June. Let's start with USC. Been committed there since last summer, almost a year now, which is incredible to think. And
It is.
he was just going into his essentially sophomore year then, and then the reclass and stuff. Break down where you are with USC, how they've been talking to you, and how does a school kind of continue to recruit you for a year by not just saying the same thing over and over?
I think the advantage with SC, so number one, I think it's been relationship. It hasn't been so much recruiting. So you kind of get to a point where X's and O's are X's and O's. The film, obviously, what Coach Riley is with quarterback development. There were some unique things I think that were revealed on the official visit, things that we weren't even aware of. And as much as I consider myself somebody who researches and kind of deep dives, there were just some things that they made us aware of, in terms of, because Coach doesn't talk about himself. I think the thing that he's done with Ju, which is made it unique for Julian, I think especially, is just the fact that he pulls from his experience with other quarterbacks, right? He's able to communicate with him in such a way that, just kind of says, hey, this reminds me of so-and-so, or this reminds me of that, or there are things that you're going to be going through on this path that, like the advantages, I've been through it all. It's kind of like same situation. When I looked for a high school for Julian, it was like, hey, Coach King, Coach Trevor in high school. And I pretty much anticipated, what we were, about to head into. And, Coach King's experience has been beneficial there. And I think, with Lincoln and SC and the platform that they have, it's been one of those things that, that's really one of the reasons why we've stuck with this decision so far.
We've talked about this before, and the Lincoln stuff we know, like he's going to develop JuJu. He's done it before. Heisman Trophy winners, number 1 picks. I mean, that's kind of a given at this point, which is a luxury, I guess.
Yeah, he's batting like 800.
Right. How important though are the defensive coaches that they brought in? Because we've talked too, like JuJu wants to win. It's that's an important part. The defensive coaches, and then what they're going to be doing with whether it's NFL experience or sort of just the youth and vigor that they bring to that side.
I'll tell you, those guys have batteries in their backs, all of them. Coach Henny loves, I've sat in his office a couple times already. He and I probably talked for 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there. Coach Lynn, that dude, man, super smart guy, like super charismatic. It's not an accident that, they've been getting the commitments that they've been getting, based on that staff. Coach Belk, all those guys, Entz, the line. These guys are like genuine dudes, head coach caliber guys. And you can tell that they're going to be able to make the adjustments. I think, people discredit, I think sometimes, just the ability to adjust within games. Yeah. And I think the level of staff that they have in place and those guys collectively, I don't think you're going to show them something that they don't have an answer for.
Is them going to the Big Ten a plus, a negative, sort of nothing? It's more exposure, essentially nationally. more
Yeah.
money flooding into the program, but it's also a lot more travel, some tough weather places that might not be.
The travel, like that's nothing we've ever considered. I mean, like the
Yeah.
travel, the weather, something we look forward to. Ju loves playing in bad weather. It's actually something that he enjoys. He's never had an issue throwing in the rain or the snow or any. I mean, we kind of work on that when he was young.
Yeah.
But I think the thing with the Big Ten is obviously the depth required to be successful in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Like the roster and the length of season, the way college football is structured now, there's really no more divisions within conferences. It's like you're going to go see the best over the course of, a 4-year period. So you really just want to have a team that's structured and positioned to be able to compete, with the best. And obviously, I think there are programs in the Big Ten right now who, kind of figured out how to recruit, like the SEC programs. They're doing a great job pulling talent out of the South and pulling the best kids from across the country, mind you. So I think looking at it from that angle for us is important. And SC is trying to recruit that way.
Yeah.
I think the thing is just being able to get those kids and keep those kids locked in.
Let's move to Colorado. Many visits there. Very intriguing situation.
3 now? I think 3.
Yeah, it's a frequent flyer to where do you go? Denver and then drive over to Boulder.
Denver,
right?
and then drive over. Yeah.
That's not bad. That's not bad. What is Dion like when the cameras aren't on, when he's not followed by a documentarian, when he's just kind of there in an office and kind of running the show?
Genuine. I think like the position that he puts you in as a parent, and especially I think there's a lot of relatability there for he and I in particular. I mean, he's a quarterback dad. Pat Shermer's a quarterback dad.
Yeah.
People forget that, like those guys. So like not only are they coaches, but they're fathers and that staff in general. I think the one thing I took from the last visit and talking to Coach, we spent probably an hour and a half with him, with Julian and I, and we just, kind of sat down and he asked us a bunch of questions and we asked him questions. And I think the thing that you take away from that, the more you're around that program, is it's genuine. Like there's a lot with those kids there. It's probably one of the happiest groups of kids I've seen. And like, I mean, like if you talk to the kids on the roster, they are genuinely happy, like genuine smiles. There's a lot of authenticity there within that program. And I think the other part is like they really do focus on like the mentorship side, the molding the kids into, becoming more than just football players and the human beings. I think that piece is important over there as well.
One concern is once Shedeur and Travis leave, can kind of sustain that level of, let's say, importance in the college football landscape, but also in like today's day and age, and we're old men now, but kids care about like brand and all those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
How important is it that he saw that? Like everyone's talking about Colorado all the time, whether it's for what Dion's doing, what he's going to do, transfer portal, whatever,
Yep. I mean, for us, the program, from what I can see, is going to be sustainable. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for, student athletes who want to come in and have an opportunity to compete and do something different. When you look at their roster again, like I think the understanding when you really talk to them, obviously it's the transfer portal. They weren't recruiting high school kids, and I think Coach understood there was a window that he had to be successful within, with Travis, Shedeur, Shiloh, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he had to get guys who could play immediately. They couldn't really focus on development. I mean, obviously they've only been there, a year,
Sure. Yeah.
That kind of thing. So now I believe they're kind of in a position where they're looking for the next guy, to obviously replace Shedeur. And that's what's been interesting to us as a family is, that ability to come in, compete for the job. And I think in today's college football landscape, the marketability, obviously, within that platform that they have. I mean, you look at, anywhere you look, Travis and Shedeur are somewhere visible. And Julian, with the brand that he's built over the years, obviously in our eyes could fit within that. But I mean, it fit, as long as he plays well at the end of the day, football is what matters the most. Yeah. But, once he hits the field, if all that matches up, then, the sky's the limit in a location like that.
Let's talk Auburn. It's actually the school closest to you guys. It's
down the street.
Yeah, down the street.
Coach Freeze is, I mean, like literally like an hour and a half away.
Yeah, which is crazy to think because but when you sit with him, Does he admit the offense was not great year one, and that's why he's sort of taken a better, a more hands-on approach and
Absolutely.
talking up Peyton Thorne a lot, but looking to the future, plus the receivers that he brought in last recruiting class? How big is that for you guys as you look at them?
So the unique thing with Auburn is they weren't in the mix at all. And nor was Colorado, right? Until he reclassed. Neither school was in the mix. And the previous staff offered, and we were like, I mean, it just didn't go well, just being honest. It was awful. And so we were like, man, we're not.
That seems like the story for a lot of people.
Yes, we're like, we're not going back there. We're never taking a visit to Auburn. And so I had some relationships with some guys who are Auburn alum, and they're like, dude, just give us a chance. Give us a chance. And we went down there, and like it was just a genuinely cool visit. I think Coach Freeze is another guy, extremely authentic, relatable. When we talked about the offense, it was one of those things. It's honestly like a game day, so we went on the game day visit last year for the Georgia game. And so we go in, we meet with him before the game, and he was so honest. He was like, hey, look, man, I don't have my guys yet. Like, this is not going to be, one of those games, but he's like, we're going to go out here and compete. We're going to play well, that kind of thing. And they went out there, they lost by 7. And I'm like, this dude just said, like, I haven't had a chance to get my guys in here yet.
Yeah.
And I remember watching them at Ole Miss, and I'm like, giving Bama hell and, all these other teams. I'm like, this dude can coach. And the thing for us, which is, it's like people are like trying to put a timeline on it. And it's one of those things where I haven't had a chance to really see what it's going to be with him as the play caller.
Yeah.
And so it's like other schools are like, well, you got to, I'm like, dude, like, we just haven't seen it. Like, we don't know, like, versus like, USC, where it's like, what coach is going to do with a quarterback like you, like Auburn, obviously they've done a phenomenal job recruiting the receiver position. They've got, a stacked room. I think the defense is, primed to have a great year as well. And I think they're going to compete. And, as we look down the road, also the value of like someone like Julian going to an Auburn, I mean, like, it obviously allows them to recruit differently, within our area.
How intriguing is that? That was literally my next question. Like, again, Atlanta kids to Auburn is not very far. Florida,
no, not at all.
Panhandle, South Georgia kids, and then you have that in-state population of Alabama kids getting better and better. And to surround himself with that, how important is that to him as he looks at that decision?
It does matter to him, and it's something that we've talked about several times. Looking at the community and looking at even that town, like. He likes the town. He likes, the fact that it is within, I mean, it's literally down the road from Carlton, Georgia. No traffic, back roads. It's a smooth ride.
Yeah.
I think the hurdle for us right now is just understanding, within that conference, what it means and how you have to recruit to be successful.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, do you want to be the guy that sets the trend? Do you want to be the guy that kind of tries to change the narrative? And that, I mean, at the end of the day, he's a kid and, he hears all the things. Auburn hasn't had a quarterback. And, I've got friends who've had kids who've, played in the SEC. And they're like, dude, SEC fans are nuts. There's like this insane, immense amount of pressure that's going to get. I mean, like the stuff Bo Nix went through there. I mean, that's an in-state legacy kid who, I mean, like, went through it all with, because the expectation is going to be, hey, we're ready to beat Alabama tomorrow. We're ready to beat Georgia tomorrow. And, so it's, as a parent, it's trying to help, dissect and evaluate all of those different scenarios. And honestly, like, for him to be, a whole person and enjoy his college experience and, play with his friends. But kind of the way things are structured now, his guys will come in wherever he's at. Like, it's just a matter of, making sure that the program can support it. And they're the caliber of guys that program's looking for.
The quarterback dads are like a fraternity.
Absolutely.
Who through the years have you kind of connected with, if anybody, to be like, how should I handle this? How should I go through it? What are the things that I should stay away from, and what are the things that I really should do and what are important?
Adam, honestly, I've been blessed. Like, when I say blessed, I've been blessed. Julian's been blessed. Like, I would say since day one, I mean, my relationships with quarterback dads and the guys that I have access to have been like a huge blessing. I mean, like probably the first guy who started giving me advice was Orville Bailey, Harrison Bailey's dad, years ago. Orville was a great dude. He made some phenomenal recommendations that have, I believe, really have helped impact Julian's career in a positive way. Craig Young, Bryce Young's dad, Pablo Fields, Justin Fields' dad. I mean, I can go on. I mean, Carl Williams, like literally, I'll never forget, Julian was in 7th grade, and I was like, dude, I'm thinking about leaving Pace Academy to go to Carlton. I called Carl. We talked for probably an hour, and like, he's like, dude, this is what I think. This is what, like, and we just go back and forth. And so it's been a blessing to have those guys. And, I mean, Craig's like Mr. Even all the time for the most part until you get him really turned up. And he gives me great advice. I mean, he and I, like, we've talked recently about, all the rankings and, being in the front for so long and what that means and, how it affects the kids and, just all of those different aspects. But from a recruiting perspective, those guys, like, when I look at the different schools and we talk through different scenarios, they're like, well, this makes sense, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Pablo, obviously, and the craziest part is I think they all, like, the relationships we built came from just mutual respect.
Yeah.
Like, it's obviously, like, it's a fraternity, like, as you said, but I think it genuinely comes from, like, just like a good place, understanding that we all have been through the same process. Like, we're all wanting the best for our sons. And, I mean, that's really what it is.
I've told a lot of dads before that we've just chatted about. I said, it's like the best few years of your life and you'll never want to do it again. Like after this, you just kind of want to get on and move forward with something else. And that's what it is. What would be for the next Bryce Young, for the next JuJu Lewis, what would be your advice as a dad who's now been through it for years, like literally years, what would be your advice to have to keep them sane? Would it be
staying sane? I think trust God, lean on God first.
Yeah.
Understand your son. Love him through it. Like, don't be so hard on him. Make the car rides home easy.
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents, like, I watch them and, like, they try to control every facet, every aspect of it. You can't control every aspect of it.
Right.
Allow your son to put in the work, trust the work, bet on him. That's what Orville Bailey. I know Orville. He said it to me way back in the day. He was like, dude, like, bet on your son. He's like, you guys have put in the work. Like, Carl Williams, literally, he's like, dude, I asked him about USC. He's like, dude, Lincoln Riley wants the #1 quarterback in the country.
Yeah.
He's like, when, no matter what you think, no matter, like, he's like, dude, if you believe your son is what Lincoln thinks he is, why wouldn't you go to USC? It's like that kind of thing. And I mean, like, at the end of the day, I think that's the part, is like, once you put in the work, you got to be willing to fall back.
Yeah.
And, let him go through the process, be there, support him, be involved fully. But at the same time, like, trust the work and let him go through what he's got to go through to become who he wants to be.
Perfect. That is JuJu Lewis's dad, TC Lewis, here for the Respect My Decision podcast. Stay tuned for more.
Welcome back into the Respect My Decision podcast. I am Greg Smith, the national recruiting analyst here at Rivals.com. And this week, I'm joined by a very special guest, Marcus Benjamin, the publisher of Canes County. Marcus, how are you, man? Thanks for jumping on.
I'm doing well, man. I mean, my head's spinning a little bit with
Right.
all the commits that have been happening for Miami, but I'm doing well. Glad to be on with you.
Yeah, man, it's good to be back on with you. And it's interesting, man. Like, y'all have just had a lot going on. Like, man, Miami has been one of those schools that has just been on a tear here recently. There's been a couple others, but like the Miami part of it really has intrigued me as we've gone along here. So I guess, we'll kind of start here. I guess they've had, 6 commitments since June 26, I believe. So what is working so well for Miami right now? And what's kind of leading to this kind of explosion in the class right now?
Yeah, I think every kid's recruiting journey is different. And I think Miami's been able to capitalize on what these kids are looking for individually for school. And Miami seems to meet, a lot of their criterias. And, with a few of the guys, it's really was just about staying home,
Right.
Just really just staying close to home, having the family, being able to watch them home games and practice, that's really appealing. And for them to get guys like Amari Wallace, Chris Ewald, and Ezekiel Marcelin, these are guys that, want to stay home, want to represent for the city. So I think that was a big factor with those guys. And then with the offensive line guys, Max Buchanan and SJ, I think it's really all about development. I think there's resumes that continue to build with Mario Cristobal and offensive line coach Alex Mirabal. So I think these recruits really kind of see that. Penei Sewell is one of their guys that they developed, who's now the highest paid offensive tackle in football. So they see that and they're like, okay, well, this guy can really take me, or this staff can really take me to the next level. So I think that's the case with, a Max Buchanan and SJ and those other guys. And I think when it comes to the defensive backs as well, I think they see opportunity for early playing time. Timothy Merritt, I think is a guy that can come in and compete for playing time. I think Stubbs as well. I think he's an explosive guy who can compete for playing time. He's already openly talked about being a dynamic duo with Zaquan Patterson, one of the top players from the previous class. So I think it's different for every player here as far as their recruiting journey, but Miami has seemed to capitalize on their official visits as far as hosting them and really kind of catering to each player's needs.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too. And when you see this big run of commitments, like kind of when you start, kind of mid-June is when they really started. But for what we were saying, June 26th on, they've had this huge run. To me, what that does signal is what you said at the end, is that they did a great job with those official visits in the month of June. June has just become such an important month around the country as it comes to official visits and being able to jockey for position and land kids. And anymore, teams really want to have exactly what has happened with Miami, right? Where they want to be able to have a lot of the class locked up and have this run so that once you get to the season, you can focus in on either some bigger targets, some flip targets. You can focus more on the season, or you can even work ahead to the next cycle, which is now becoming even more and more in style. As you'll see, and I know they got an event, later on in July, once things open back up. I'm sure there'll be a lot of underclassmen at that. And so, there's just a lot of reasons that, it's very beneficial to get this type of run going. But also, like I said, hats off to them for being able to really nail guys down, that they convert guys that they had in for official visits, which I think is a big deal. But one thing I definitely also want to hit on with you on that too is, it's great to get a bunch of guys and have them kind of get in the class, and there's a lot of excitement. But how do the guys that they've been landing here in June kind of match up with the way that you see their team needs right now?
Yeah, Miami is probably going to be a little thin at defensive back in the next upcoming year. So I think they did well in adding a Hilton Stubbs and Amari Wallace and Timothy Merritt and CJ Ewald. I think, like I alluded to before, I think these guys can compete for playing time. So I think, they actually probably need to add a couple of more guys just in case, because, I'm expecting a Michelle Powell, the transfer from Washington to, he's of course going to be gone. You got other guys in the mix, but just not enough depth. And I think they really had to address the defensive back position, as well as the linebackers as well, because you got a Kiko Malinoa, who likely will be off to the NFL next season. And then you got a Wesley Basaint, who, depending on how great of a season he has this year, he could be eligible for a high selection in the NFL draft as well. So I think they had to address linebacker, and I think it was key to keep an Elijah Melendez in the class. I think they really confirmed him after his official visit, and to get a guy like Gavin Nix in the mix as far as IMG, you want to kind of continue that pipeline that Miami has going there, and then a Herbert Scroggins as well. I think Miami needs to add a lot more to the defensive line, but Herbert Scroggins is definitely a good start in the right direction. Really athletic. He fits the mold of what Mario Cristobal and his staff really wants to build on in the trenches. And one other thing I do want to point out is that as far as like what's been working for Miami is the fact that you got a Hall of Famer on the staff and Jason Taylor. I mean, I think he just his presence alone and just the opportunity to be taught from a guy with a gold jacket is definitely an easy selling point. Let's just say,
Absolutely.
So to speak. So yeah, I think they have to address some needs on the defensive line in these next couple of weeks and months. But you got your quarterback obviously in Luke Nickel. You got one running back in Gerard Pringle. I think they have to add another running back there. But the position that Miami really needs to fill is wide receiver. I mean, we have yet to see a wide receiver. I mean, we had one. Miami did have for a moment with Wade and Charles, but of course he is now off to UCF. But Miami needs to really build on that position for sure. I think that's probably the greatest of needs. And I think Miami did well in getting Stubbs to commit because that's kind of an in possibly for a Jamie French, being that they're teammates in high school. So I think Miami did very well on offensive line. Need some work on D line, but I think they certainly are addressed the needs at linebacker and defensive back.
Yeah, and I think that the defensive back group, that in linebacker group, so that back seven that is kind of coming into shape here with them right now, I really like. I think you mentioned the word a couple of times, athletic. I think that is kind of the word that comes to mind when you think about those guys that they have kind of committed right now, and that's good. Like you want to in today's college football, like it has changed so rapidly, and you need guys that are athletic enough to kind of be Swiss Army knives at various positions in that back end, because you're just going to see so many different matchup problems now when it comes to modern offenses. So it's a good thing that they're building that way. And to echo your point about Jason Taylor and having him on staff, every time I talk to a kid that is considering Miami from the defensive line, like they just rave about being able to spend time with him and learn from him and talk to him and about how great he is. So yeah, that is definitely a great thing to have in the back pocket. Then I think that the two areas that I hear the most about on their coaching staff outside of Mario Cristobal himself is Jason Taylor on the defensive line and then Mirabal on the offensive line. And I think that if you're trying to build your program, I think that that's music to Mario Cristobal's ears to hear that the guys in the trenches that I have hired are the guys that seem to be getting a lot of love from recruits on the recruiting trail. Like that is a good way, I think, to build your program. Now, one of the things too, and you kind of mentioned kind of defensive back and Hilton Stubbs, like he was a recent commitment here, had previously been committed to USC. It was going to go a long way across the country to play at USC from Jacksonville Mandarin High School. What does Hilton, like how big of a commitment was that to get him, A, and B, what type of player do you see him as? What type of role do you see him being able to have in that Miami defense?
Yeah, Stubbs is just versatile, and he's freakishly athletic. He's not just athletic; he's freakishly athletic. I mean, you saw him at the Rivals 5-star. He won the vertical jump. I mean, he can just really just cause problems for an offense, just because even if he's out of position, he can make up for it with his recovery speed. So I really like that about him. When you watch his tape, you could just see that he's got a nose for the football and he knows how to deliver the blow as well. He's an intimidating type of safety. He's prototypical as far as what you would want, or with the new game coming out, I can't wait to see how he plays in that game, because just his versatility and what he brings to a defense, he allows like a defense to make mistakes, and he can probably make up for it with his athleticism. So I think it's a huge deal that they got Stubbs. I think he is the best safety in the country, in my opinion.
It's tough, man. We've had that conversation. in safety, because he can just do so much. And like you mentioned, I saw him at Rivals 5-star. You see all the measurables and traits are there. I've seen him play in a game as well. I saw them last year. Then I've seen him. I saw Jamie French and Tramel Jones as well, were teammates of his. And Stubbs just stands out on defense because I didn't know coming out of that game. I was like, man, is he going to keep getting bigger, or can he come play in the box? Like, will he continue to roam the kind of the back third? Like, what happens here with him? And then you come away just thinking the answer is yes, he could do either. Like, he could do all of it. He is such a unique player, and it's why he was so, like, I thought, important to USC's class. And I thought that if USC could have held on to him, he was exactly the type of player that they needed going forward, because their defense has just been so bad. But to get him to stay home and flip him to Miami, I think it's just a huge deal, because you can, like you said, you can do so much with him, and it allows you to kind of free up your scheme to do to either blitz more, because you know you can take more chances. There's a lot you can do.
Exactly.
Like, it's a huge pickup for Miami.
Yeah, and I think he's just very versatile as well, as far as position wise when it comes to the defensive back position. Yeah, this guy can play nickel, and he can he play one-on-one as well. We saw him, like I said, at the Rivals 5-star playing one-on-one, so he can play there on the boundary, as well as play close to the line as a strong safety, in the box type of safety, and he can be that rangy free safety as well that can really kind of navigate that back line and just make sure no deep shots go past him as well. So yeah, I think his versatility is probably something that's not currently on the team right now, as far as like just as much as he can do at such a young age. So I think the sky's the limit for him. I mean, some of the on my YouTube, some of the comments on my YouTube about Stubbs have been kind of off the charts, even comparing him to Sean Taylor, which I don't know about that just yet. I mean, but they have very similar style of play, where Taylor was a guy who could just roam on that back end, and he was going to lay the boom on you, and he can also play well in coverage as well. It's very similar. But Stubbs might actually have him on that vertical jump. So, so I mean, I've seen Stubbs make a one-handed interception with his left hand. So, I mean, that's the type of athleticism that Miami's getting, and Hurricanes should be really, really excited.
Yeah, Jay should be absolutely thrilled about that. And, we kind of, one of the things too, we kind of mentioned a little bit about kind of the needs moving forward for Miami. So I think I know what your answer is going to be here. We're going to talk some wide receivers, but what do you see as kind of the needs moving forward now for both? I guess kind of the rest of July is, like we mentioned, kind of I think they call it the pool party down there at the end of July. Everybody has their own little thing. It's the pool parties, the barbecue, the cookout. Everybody has their own thing. And so Miami does have that coming up. Obviously, you have in season as well to look forward to. But what are the needs kind of moving forward? And are there a couple of targets that Canes fans should be looking out for?
Well, yeah, like I said, definitely wide receiver, man. They're without a wide receiver currently on the board for 2025, it causes some concern for Hurricanes fans, but there are a lot of targets out there that Miami's looking at. I mentioned Jamie French earlier. I think Miami's in a pretty good spot there, but they'll have to battle the likes of LSU and Texas as well. So we'll see how that one plays out. Dallas Wilson is another guy that should be on flip watch as well. Miami really likes Dallas Wilson, and from what I hear, Dallas Wilson would probably like to stay home in the state of Florida. But he is a longtime fan of Oregon, and from what I hear, Oregon did well with him on his last official visit. So that's a tough ask for Miami, but Miami's going to continue to push, as we've seen in recent cycles, that it doesn't really matter as far as who a player might be committed to, because Miami is going to continue to push until signing day. So Dallas Wilson's definitely a player to watch. Dalen Upshaw is another player out of Alabama. I think Miami really likes him. Kevin Beard, wide receivers coach, is really high on him as well. Miami is still kind of in the mix for a Vernell Brown. It seemed like Miami could be possibly losing that battle to in-state rivals there, but I think Miami is still kind of in the mix at wide receiver. So I think those are kind of the primary targets at wide receiver for Miami, and then defensive line. They have yet to have a defensive tackle. To the 2025 commitment class. They're very interested in a Jarquez Carter.
Oh yeah.
And
like him, like his game a lot.
Yeah, strong.
Yeah, yeah, strong. Yes, that's all you do say. Strong. Yes,
definitely. Yeah. I mean, won the bench press at the Rivals 5-star. Pushing it up 27 times. So really good kid. Really likes Miami. Really loved the official visit. I had a chance to speak to him afterwards. So I think Miami definitely has a shot here. A lot of Ohio State buzz there, but I think Miami still has a shot there for a Jarquez Carter. They're also interested in a Floyd Boucard, local kid who is now playing at Miami Central, a powerhouse high school down here. I think there's definitely a possibility of them adding him to the mix. And then it's DJ Pickett, man. DJ Pickett, when I spoke to him, he clearly wants to be a corner. He could play a variety of positions, but to have him to add with Chris Ewald and a Timothy Merritt would be outstanding for that defensive back room. I think they're pretty solid at linebacker, and I think they're pretty solid at an offensive line. Byron Lewis is the running back that is Miami's primary target at running back, and he came to the Rivals 5-star in a Miami jacket. So
right, I was about to say he showed up ready to go.
Yeah, so I think Miami's in a very good place there, but he comes off as a guy who definitely wants to take his time, definitely wants to kind of make sure it's the right decision. But I think, that clearly Miami should be the front runner there. Another defensive back I want to mention is Jabari Antoine, the recent LSU decommit. That's a player that Miami definitely wants to add to the mix. So it could be as many as 6, maybe even 7 DBs added to this class just to add to that room because of depth concerns. But I think defensive line, like I said, is the primary concern. They may add another offensive lineman in a Cortez Smith. I think that's a Miami Georgia battle there. I know they really like him as well, but they have already got like basically a starting lineup when it comes to offensive line already with the guys that they have. So I think defensive line and, like I said, wide receiver are definitely the most important going forward in these next upcoming weeks.
Yeah, and there's definitely some big fish that you mentioned out there for them to kind of still be involved with. I'm fascinated to see how the Jamie French situation goes. He's just a kid that, Texas has a lot of buzz right now, but it would not surprise me if it gets shaken up and Miami ends up being able to pull that out and he wants to stay in state. Like, there's just a lot of reasons for him to go kind of either way on that when it comes to his recruitment. And it's funny too, with the way that Miami recruited defensive line last year, you and I talked a lot about this. It ends up, you can really build off of that. If you can backfill that with a couple more defensive linemen, and then because you've got good defensive linemen, you can get good defensive backs because they know that you're going to be able to put some pressure on, and then they'll be able to make plays. Like, it all kind of works together. And it's just interesting how that kind of comes together like that. But I'm going to get you out of here on this one, man. And it's been great talking with you. It's, Miami, it's starting to build up some buzz right this season about being a dark horse contender to make it to the expanded college football playoff. So I guess in your mind, as you've been covering this team and in there with them daily, I guess what to you has to happen for Miami to be able to be that kind of team that makes it to a college football playoff?
It all starts at quarterback, Greg, and that's with Cam Ward. I mean, the transfer from Washington State has to stay healthy. He has to stay healthy for the entire season for Miami to have a legitimate chance, I think, to make a playoff run, because this team, I think it has all the pieces to really, make a run at an ACC championship and college football playoff berth. I mean, this offensive line has drastically improved from when I've been covering them. I think they've got really, just great talent at pretty much every position. I think Jalen Rivers is likely going to be drafted into the NFL, and Inez Cooper keeps getting better every year. Like you alluded to earlier, like Miami's trying to build their program through the trenches, and I think they've done so on the offensive line and on the defensive line as well. I think this defensive line is arguably the best in the country. And I think if you have a solid offensive line and a defensive line that can stop the run and rush the passer, then you have potential to pretty much beat any team on your schedule,
Right.
as long as you don't, turn the ball over, where, it definitely will be in the hands of Cam Ward, who had some issues with fumbling last year. But I think those will be resolved with offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson at the helm. I think this team definitely has a chance if Cam Ward, like I said, is under center for the majority of the snaps this season. I think you got the veteran leadership that you want at linebacker with Akiko Mauanoa. I think his health is also important to maintain during the season, and as well as you got a Michelle Powell on the back end who was brought in from Washington, has that championship game experience, and just having that element and just the depth on the defensive line that they have. They can run 8 guys, in and out of that lineup on the defensive line. And then when you add a player like a Damian Martinez, a running back, you add a player like Sam Brown at wide receiver, to also add with Xavier Restrepo, who had a record-setting season last year, and Jacoby George also ranked in the top 5 in yards in the ACC as far as receiving is concerned. You got the pieces when it comes to playmakers are concerned. And I think year 2 under Shannon Dawson, year 2 under Lance Guidry, I think these guys have really truly bought into the systems here. And I think it can all come together for Miami. I won't go as far as saying the U is back. That's something that oversaid, especially down here in Miami. But I think they have a legitimate chance to make a playoff run with Cam Ward at the helm, who I think should be considered for, the Heisman if he, performs like he should.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the biggest storylines going in the country for this season is I don't want to say is Miami back, like it's funny. It is such a cliche, but that story about if they could make that type of run under Mario Cristobal and kind of get this thing really jump started, because we see the potential and the promise. You see what they're doing on the recruiting trail. You see what they're also doing, like you mentioned, in the transfer portal with some of those guys that led by Cam Ward coming in. The pieces are there. If they can make that playoff run, and I don't even think it's not a situation where they need to go win the national championship, in my opinion. They can make the playoffs, win the ACC, make the playoffs. I think I think it's realistic. I think it's something, especially like you said, the key being Cam Ward's health. Obviously, you keep your star quarterback healthy, and you have that type of defensive and offensive line. You've got a shot, right? I think that they have a legitimate shot, and it's something that I'll definitely be watching. This definitely would not be the last time that I speak with you about this topic, because it is something I'm really interested in with what's going on down there. But that's going to do it for me on this episode of Respect My Decision. Marcus, thank you so much for jumping on, man. Make sure you check his work out over at CanesCounty.com. Check Marcus out over on Twitter at Benjamin Rivals. You can check me out at Greg Smith Rivals, as you see on the screen. Also, pop over to Rivals.com to check out all of our coverage of so many things happening this summer as we get ramped up for the season. We'll talk to you guys later.